shoes, walking blues, climb the fence, books and pens. I can tell that we are gonna be friends.
Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I've got canned heat in my heels tonight, baby.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Napoleon Dynamite, which released in 2004 from writers Jerusha and Jared Hess and directed by Jared Hess. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows a school kid called Napoleon Dynamite, played by Heder. He's an awkward, kind of unsociable type of kid who is just trying to get through his life of awkwardness. But after his grandma is injured, his uncle Rico has to come and stay with him and his brother Kip and make his life even more awkward. But luckily Napoleon has his buddies Pedro and Deb to fall back on and try to save the rest of the year.
What are you going to do today, Napoleon?
Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh!
So most people would consider Napoleon Dynamite kind of an overnight success.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of backstory to this one where it was actually a film school project that was a short story for Napoleon Dynamite. Jared Hess had this idea for the character, met Heder, had him perm his hair for the short film.
Nice.
Made the short film, committed to it, and then they took it to a film festival where a producer looked at it and went, Hey, Jared, have you got a full script for this? Mm-hmm. Young Jared was like, yeah. He didn't.
He didn't. And
he went, great, send it to me. He was like, okay. Quickly go and finish the script for a feature movie.
Yeah.
And sent it off, and they were just like, great, here's $400,000 to make your movie.
Nice.
Still pretty low budget considering.
Oh, yeah.
But independent movie, considering what he did with nothing for a short film.
Yeah.
And then, so it was basically almost a year and a half later from the short film to then actually making Napoleon Dynamite on that budget of $400,000, and it grossed $30 million in the cinema. Not to mention how much it made on DVD sales, considering this film rose to the top of pop culture. It was absolutely iconic. There was Pedro t-shirts, badges and buttons, and everyone was talking about.
John Heder's career kind of just shot up, didn't it? You know,
well, he was an unknown.
He was just in film after film after this because he was supposed to be like comedy's next big star. But I was like, look, whoa. He did like one role in Napoleon Dynamite, and even then most of that was the script writing, so I wouldn't say he's the greatest comedian ever.
Well, that's it. This film has all come. It's almost like an autobiography. For Jared Hess, who grew up in one of these towns, and so a lot of his experiences with his siblings, with his parents, with his other students, with people in his town, he's reflected it, and sometimes he's even said that actual conversations in this film have come from exact conversations he's had in real life. So I was like, that kind of gives a bit of a new spin on the film, where I didn't realize how much of it had actually come from real stories, just like the one near the beginning where the bus drives past and the farmer's there trying to get his gun to work. We don't see it, but all the kids do. And apparently that actually happened to Jared Hess while he was on a school bus, just watched a farmer blast a cow as it drove past. It's like, wow.
I think that for me is why this movie kind of holds a special place in my heart, because when I watched it when I was younger, like in my 20s when it first came out, I didn't get it. I didn't get this form of comedy. At the same time, I'll openly admit, at that age, I didn't like Office Space. I was like, well, it's another one of those kind of MTV influence kind of awkward comedies that you kind of had to be relating to in that environment. So it wasn't until I was a little bit older, same thing with Office Space. I'd worked in an office, I'd worked with people like that, so I related to the jokes. The movie grew on me. So then as I watched Napoleon Dynamite older, I was like, oh my God, I totally relate to this now, because I know people, or I have been that awkward person in these social situations, in schools, trying to talk to girls, giving them notes and stuff, having them laugh at me, get beaten up in the corridor, John Heder is playing Napoleon as if he's, what's it? He thinks he's the coolest fucking person ever.
Right.
Which is cool because we all think we're the coolest person ever. And some of the conversation pieces he has, like in the locker room, it's like, what did you do again last winter? I went Wolverine hunting with my uncle. God! And how many did you kill? I killed like 50 with like a 12 gauge shotgun. You know, it's like over the top.
What'd you do all last summer again?
I told you, I spent it with my uncle in Alaska hunting wolverines.
Did you shoot any?
Yes, like 50 of them.
Yeah, and that kind of expression, the way he delivers it, like, are people still imitating Napoleon Dynamite 20 years later?
Lucky!
Yes, they are. Now, that is pretty much, like, this film, not much actually happens.
No.
It's kind of just, like, little
situations,
oddball, weird, strange comedy moments that all revolve around the awkwardness of these characters, where they all kind of feel like they're socially inept, you know? Like, they don't quite know how to communicate with each other, yet in this world, it's just normal.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, the scene where he calls up his brother, and he's like... Is Mom there?
Yeah, Grandma, yeah.
Grandma there? No.
Yeah.
Can you come and pick me up?
That's it. I mean, Kip, played by Aaron Ruel, oh my God, he's so funny. Because all Kip does is sit on the computer all day, chatting to his girlfriend online.
Yeah.
Now, like, I got a question for you. When do you think this is set?
2004.
Right, so to you, the film is set in 2004.
Yeah.
And yet a lot of the clothes, a lot of the background stuff is very 80s-like.
So much so that, because you're talking about this now,
yeah.
I'm going to mention the uncle that turns up, Uncle Rico.
Yeah.
Who, throughout the movie, wishes he could go back in time to 1982.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I'm like, I think... his time machine might have actually worked, because in this film it feels like they're in 1982 with the dress sense,
yes,
with Deb's fashion shoots,
yes,
VHS tapes,
yes,
cassette tapes,
yes,
aerobics VHS tapes and videos, people wanting to learn karate. I was like, everything in this film feels 80s.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's great.
But the film
it
doesn't actually say it.
It doesn't, no. It is set like present time. I'm pretty sure it is, because of the way they kind of talk to each other.
Yeah, but that's it. We don't see no mobile phones.
But
we never see any updated cars.
For me, it reflects these characters that live in this town that time has kind of stayed still for.
Yes.
So that is why all of these characters are now kind of odd and strange and weird, because they're out of time.
Yeah, which I think in itself feeds into the film. Like, first-time viewers sitting down and watching this, yes, they'll be like completely out of their element. What the hell's going on? Who are these people? Why do they look like this? Things like that. And yet the more times you watch this, like I said, this is like the 5th or 6th time I've watched this, that I'm like, it feels like it's present day, but then it also feels like it's set in the 80s. And yet the movie doesn't say it. The only thing that ever catches me off guard is Kip sitting at the computer talking about how he's emailing, things like that, because even though we don't actually see him do anything, like the computer might not even be on, you know, he's just sat there pretending. But that makes me think, oh well, it's closer to 90s, mid 90s. But like I said, we don't see no mobile phones, we don't see any other computers, we don't see any movies. Most of the stuff is kind of old, retro, but like Gary said, that could be playing in fact that the town that they're in is so secluded out of nowhere. You know, it's just so weird. And yeah, like we said, we've got Kip who's talking to his girlfriend LaFwanda, and about how they're going to hook up at some point as well. And for me as well, that I think is one of the biggest turning point stories of the entire movie, that you don't actually notice until it comes along and she turns up and you're like, oh fuck, she's real,
right? When you see him standing there with the name sign, you're just expecting disappointment, you know. And but then, oh my god, the flirty eyes that they keep giving each other. I'm like, this is a scam. I'm waiting for the scam.
The scam.
Especially considering the time machine turns up that they order off the internet.
Oh my god!
And that is a scam. Would you believe it? I love that Napoleon sat there with a time machine there and he's like, turn it on.
Turn it on.
He's like, turn it off, turn it off.
And then Uncle Rico's like, I could have told you it didn't work.
Yeah, he's nursing his burnt crotch.
Okay, turn it on.
And it's just all weird, awkward comedy situations. I mean, Gary and I have said this about comedy movies a lot of times. It's like, comedy movies are some of the most easiest films to review, really, because it's literally just sequence after sequence of joke after joke after joke. And some of them work, some of them
It's kind of like,
don't.
what skits work, which ones don't. And
but weirdly enough, like, this is what I really love about comedy, is like where you take a movie like, say, Police Academy, which has just been completely built up from the ground up, that these cops are built to be these characters, the actors are playing those characters, situations happen.
Yeah.
With this, I look at Napoleon Dynamite and I'm like, I know people like that. I've been in awkward situations like that, like Pedro, when Pedro turns up, played by Efren Ramirez. How many times have you been in a school and the new kid has turned up and he absolutely has no idea, hasn't any friends, and he's just, he seems awkward, but it's mainly because he's afraid, he's scared. So here comes Napoleon, walks right up, immediately becomes his best mate. The two of them just immediately start hanging out with each other.
Start bonding over his bike.
Yeah, they start bonding over the bike. And like I said, in comparison to other comedies, you think that Napoleon is just completely awkward and weird, and yet the way he has this kind of bondman friendship with Pedro, it's really nice.
It is, for me, the real heart of the movie.
Yeah.
Their friendship, how it evolves, is really nice. It's really good. And yeah, Pedro has become, if not as iconic as Napoleon himself, especially when he runs for class president towards the end of the film, because this film does it like, most comedies or dramas like this, that ends with the school dance, the end of summer dance.
Yeah.
This film's midpoint is the school dance.
Yeah.
So you've got it is basically a high school kind of drama with the comedy.
Yeah.
Whether you find it funny or not, it's comedy.
Yeah.
And it is all the situational stuff you expect in high schools. And Napoleon gets bullied by everyone. Mm-hmm. He's ridiculed, for his class presentations and other stuff.
Sorry, I just remembered the sing song.
Yeah, right. And you're just like, what? I mean, most of the other students sat there watching are like, what is this? But you've got that one bully guy who's Donnie, who's so exaggerated throughout the film. I'm like, is he supposed to be? I mean, he's most of the audience probably watching this film going,
yeah. Yeah. I love the fact as well. So like Napoleon finds out that Pedro really wants to ask out one of the popular girls, Summer, to a dance. And he does. Pedro asks her and she says no. So then he asks Deb, played by Tina Majorino, who is the young girl from Waterworld who had the map on her back, but she's all grown up now. And her and Napoleon have had a bit of kind of interactions where she's left all of her crap on his porch when she's been trying to do, like, she's trying to save up money for college. So she tried to sell him glamour shots or keychains. And Napoleon's awkwardness or his interaction with her kind of put her off. And so she left all of her stuff there. But Pedro's asked her out. She said yes. And so Napoleon's kind of left out now. And so he's asked Pedro for some advice. Pedro's like, look, you're a great drawer. Do a drawing of some girl that you fancy and see if she likes that. So he does the picture for Trisha, Summer's friend. And it's the way he's on the phone to her and he's like, oh yeah, it's probably one of the best drawings I ever did. The shading on your upper lip took a little while.
You're looking at this drawing and you're like, it's a monstrosity.
It's a monstrosity.
But the girl's mother's like, you will take that nice young boy to the dance. Now, the drawings in the film, there's quite a few of them, as Napoleon is constantly doodling in his scrapbook. And all of the drawings in the film were actually done by John Heder, except for the farting unicorns. For some reason, that wasn't done by him. But interestingly, I'm going to go back to the very beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of trivia here for you. Now, all of the food items being put down.
Yeah, that was a great intro.
That was a great intro because apparently everybody in the film eats their meal at one point that their name is on.
Yeah, they did.
Which was cool. But apparently they had to refilm that intro because the studio that was giving the film the funding, was Fox Searchlight, turned around and went, no, you need to redo that entire intro. And we've hired a hand model to fly out there and shoot that with you because the hands in your intro, well, they're ugly.
Yeah.
It's just like,
That's John Heder's hands.
Yeah.
We don't like John Heder's hands, so we're going to change it for a model. Did they keep the model's hands? Because I was looking.
I think there's actually a couple of hands. I think it's intercut.
Yeah. I completely forgot about the intro and just the way that the food comes out, the way it's all designed, and then the food gets taken away and then something else gets burned. And it was such a cool little fun intro. You know, like by the time it got to directed by, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of just settled. I don't need to take this film apart or overanalyze it. I just need to go along for the ride.
It's the song that they use at the intro as well. Which,
White Stripes.
Which the director was just like, right, I really want this White Stripes song, but we ain't got no freaking money.
Yeah.
So I'll just humble up and I'm just going to write a note. I'm going to write a letter, I'm going to get a stamp and send it to White Stripes. And a few weeks later, he got a record because they'd never commissioned to have their music in any films at this point.
Yeah.
And they just went, he actually sent them the finished film. They watched it and then they went, yeah, we'd love to have our song start your movie. I was like, yeah, that really helps start this movie quite well. Because it sounds professional. Yeah, and the imagery coming up on screen looks good. So even though it's an indie movie, it comes across much more slick than you'd think.
And that's the crazy thing about this film is that you know it's an independent movie and yet it looks quite slick. And so it's got some money, so it's got some heart. So the actors are actually doing their parts, even though they're awkward as fuck. So even to the most, die-hard, I don't like comedy kind of person, there would be bound to be, I bet money, something in this movie that makes you go, yeah, I get that. Be it Uncle Rico throwing a steak at fucking Napoleon's face as he's riding a bike. Or, fucking all of the Uncle Rico stuff is just awkward as fuck.
He's so...
sleazy.
He's
so sleazy.
He's literally there to just he's a snake oil salesman. He's just trying to make some money any way he can, and so he's kind of got all these get rich schemes other than traveling back in time. He wants to be a pro football player. So he's constantly filming himself throwing the ball. But then he ends up hiring Kip to go door to door selling Tupperware.
Tupperware. That's when you're in the 80s when people are trying to fucking sell you Tupperware. But it's when he goes to decide to sell the Bust Must Plus stuff to girls. And so he's literally driving around to some of the schoolgirls that know Napoleon and he's handing out flyers to them. So that makes Napoleon's life even more awkward. He goes and he shows some to Deb. And so Deb gets all pissed off at Napoleon because she thinks that Napoleon put Rico up to it. It's not until he ends up going to Starla, the wife of Rex Kwon Do, and he's got pots on her chest. And then you see Rex Kwon Do walk in and go,
next time we see Uncle Rico, he's got black eye, arms in a sling. And he's still throwing that ball.
Here.
Come here, boy!
And everything just kind of builds up. That's what I always like about this film, is that nothing too dark or stressful happens. It just, you do hit a couple of low points, but you're on Napoleon's level, so you're not entirely sure where low is. But it all starts to build back up again. So, he's learning how to dance. He meets La Fwanda, which completely shocks him that Kip can get himself a girlfriend. And then Kip gives him some brotherly advice like, hey, Napoleon, I'm sure there's somebody out there just for you. Peace out.
A complete change of character. But still the same.
Still the same.
So Napoleon's like, well, I need to go and earn some money. So he goes to work on the farm for the day.
Oh, God.
It's just one thing after when they break the eggs. I was like, what are they doing? Is that orange juice or is that just a big egg mix?
It's just an egg. I mean, it's good for you, I suppose. And weightlifters eat protein straight eggs. I don't know why. I mean, it's the flies all over the sandwiches that fucking put me off.
Well, there's flies all over the movie. It's completely natural, I suppose. Yeah.
And the farmers are just stood there just talking about stuff while he's eating sandwiches. But Pedro's obviously put himself forward for the presidency, for class president. He's going up against Summer. He's made some really cool ideas, like getting his gangster buddy homies in their car to help him deal with bullies. But then he's made some bad decisions, like the piñata that he puts up of Summer and gets his classmates to beat it with a stick. And so then it comes to the day of doing the speech. And so Pedro is kind of really nervous because Summer has done her speech, which has been a bit shit. And then she's done her skit, which Donnie in the crowd is fucking love. I love that because he stands up, he's like, whoa, yeah, and everyone else is like, oh, fuck Summer. We hate Summer. So then Pedro comes out. He's all nervous. He doesn't want to do it. He takes some advice from Napoleon.
Well, he feels completely deflated and defeated before he even walks on stage at this point. He's like, what is the point? I'll just, if you vote for me, all your wildest dreams will come true.
And the actor sells Pedro so well.
He does.
Like, just his tone, his mannerisms, the way he carries himself. He's so deflated. But Napoleon takes it upon himself to take the music tape that he's listening to, give it to the teacher, and he's going to do his dance. And it's one of the most iconic dances in fucking film history, I think.
It absolutely is. And like when I watched this film 20 years ago, I was just like, what the F is everybody raving about this dance scene for? It looks so damn ropey. I mean, today, right? You go on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or like everybody's doing their stupid dance. Sorry, no offense. Stupid dance. Like I don't understand. Like I guess it was ahead of its time, you know. But I appreciate it now because it is like the entire film is building up to this point, and John Heder knew like the audience in the film are all going to cheer and applaud like crazy,
regardless of what he does.
But in the script, Jared Hess just wrote, and Napoleon Dynamite dances. And so, you know, it's come to the day of filming and John Heder's just like, what do we do? Like, now, I've heard 2 different stories about the dance. I can't really tell which one it is.
Right.
Probably a bit of both.
Okay.
Now, apparently, John Heder, Jared Hess, and Tina Majorino all sort of rehearsed and practiced some routines to a couple of different songs.
Yeah.
But apparently on the day of filming, it was all improvised.
Right.
So I think they rehearsed and practiced a few things, and then on the day, they sort of combined all of the sort of stuff that they'd practiced and therefore improvised it on the spot.
Yeah.
At the same time, because this was also shot at the end of the production, they realized they only had 10 minutes of film stock left.
Right.
So they rolled on him dancing until the film stock ran out, and then they cut because they had to.
Yeah.
And they didn't have all of the dance that they needed. So it was an editing job to edit and splice together to make it work. And
it works, I think.
My God, does it work?
Yeah.
Like the song used, his routine, the audience reaction, the way it's spliced together, the way he moves, it works. Even though I didn't think it did 20 years ago, looking at it now, I'm like, wow, you're quite a trendsetter, actually.
Yeah, well, this was what I found as well. So, like, for me, watching it for the review, it's you take that really, really awkward person in any movie you've seen who doesn't like to stand out in front of people, doesn't want to, you know, make themselves in a spotlight.
Totally.
Yeah. And yet they have to back up their buddy. And it was one of the things, like, he'd gone to see Rex Wando with Kip. They said about the buddy system, and immediately John Heder, Napoleon, had taken upon that idea. When he met Pedro, he said to him at that point as well, we're buddies now, have you got my back? And Pedro's like, I don't know. And so, in a way, this now is Napoleon going, you're my friend, I believe I'm supposed to help you, I've got your back, I'm going to put myself out there.
Yeah.
It must be the most awkward fucking situation. I say this to people all the time, they're like, you should go out there and dance. And yet they're like, no, I just can't. And I'm thinking to myself, you can, you're just afraid of what everybody else is going to think of you. Don't think about what they think of you. Just fucking do it. And so then that's what I take from Napoleon doing the dance. Yeah, like you said, he must have done a bunch of different things, and then they've just edited and spliced it all together to keep the music flowing. I love the way the music just cuts.
Yeah.
I fucking love that. Like, you've got a few minutes to do your skit, and so you get into it. You're like, oh man, this is great. He's dancing, everyone's dancing. And then the music cuts. Napoleon's still dancing, realizes what's going on, grabs his shit, and gets off stage as quickly as he can. And then the whole crowd fucking erupts. Yeah. And they just absolutely love it.
We got to Pedro. He's with his family. Yeah. They're all celebrating him. Like, yes.
I mean, it is literally just a really wonderful kind of tie all the loose ends together kind of ending. You know, like Kip gets with LaFwanda, you know.
They get on the bus, don't they? At first I was like, oh, she's leaving and he's taking her bag. So I was like, no, he's going too.
He's going too. He's actually going to try his new life. Pedro's got his whole family. He's settled into this new life in town. You know, Deb.
Grandma's home.
Grandma's home. She's looking all healthy. You know, she's finished fucking dune buggy fucking racing or whatever. And even though Napoleon's on his own, like hitting the tetherball, I mean, we see Uncle Rico. He gets his girlfriend back or his wife.
Yeah.
She turns up, which kind of makes me think of that whole time travel thing.
Right.
You know, like he's come back to the future now, and she's like, And Napoleon's still hitting to have a ball on his own like he was at the beginning. But Deb comes walking up and her hair's all flat. You know, she's wearing a nice pretty dress. And they just play this game with each other. And this could be the ending for you. And I do really like this about the movie, that you could end the movie here.
For a lot of people, it did.
Yeah. But if you keep watching through the credits, you actually see the wedding of Kip and LaFwanda.
That's right. It has. It's 2 months later.
Yeah.
Now, when the film originally played in the festivals, once it was made, the ending, this extra ending wasn't there.
Oh, right.
But when they were getting ready to do a wider theatrical release for the film, the studio went, "Here's some more money. We need an epilogue. To come at the end of the film because we love the film so much. So go make a bit more of it."
Yeah.
Now, apparently, this wedding scene. The budget for this was half of what the entire film's budget was.
Wow. You can kind of see it, actually.
200,000 for just this wedding scene.
Between the field that they're in and
all the extras
that are there, the suits, the makeup.
We've already gone past the credits, and this film did something interesting in that all 181 students that play extras in the film are all credited in the credits.
Wow.
Just something you don't see very often.
You don't see
so
that.
I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole wedding scene, I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. And they even got the actress's actual family sat there as well. Because it was just like, well, we'll just fly out the whole family to do this scene.
I love how awkward they look.
Yeah, just like, what are you doing?
What are you marrying this guy for? He's fucking, look at him, he's a weed, and yet she's so in love. And then over the hill comes fucking Napoleon on this horse. This stallion with his kind of shirt opened, you know, just looking. It's kind of like a dream in a weird way. You kind of think that this is a dream, but it is actually all real. And he rides up and he's like, "Deb, get a picture of me on the horse." And so she takes a picture, and then he gives the horse to Kip and LaFwanda, I think it is, to ride off into the horse in the sunset.
Yeah, that's great.
It's so good.
Now, there has been talks over the years of more Napoleon Dynamite, and we did actually get a short animated.
I was going to say,
there were 6 episodes.
Yeah, I remember an animated series.
Actually brought in the cast and the director as well, and they worked on it, but then that ended pretty swiftly.
Yeah,
but
I think it died. Napoleon had lost its fire at that point.
In animated form, maybe the audience just wasn't wanting that.
Yeah.
But there's still been talks over the years of making another one. John Heder has also said that he's more than willing to reprise the role. As a matter of fact, the studio called him up and said, "Hey, we're going to do Napoleon Dynamite 2. Are you in?" And he went, "Is Jared Hess directing?" And the studio went, "Actually, he doesn't want to do it." So John Heder went, "Well, then I don't either." If you don't have him, you don't have me.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen. And the director's also said, yeah, he'd consider it, but he was like, you might not want a Napoleon Dynamite 2 because the idea, if I do make one, is that it's like real time has passed since that movie as much time in our world has passed.
Yeah.
And he said, and he doesn't quite feel like Napoleon Dynamite is going to be in a good place. So it's like, I don't know whether this is going to be a comedy or a thriller.
See, I thought that. I was thinking this while I was watching. I was like, I wonder if they could do a Napoleon Dynamite 2. And then I thought, well, if they did, it'd have to be like the son of Napoleon,
right?
You know, because John Heder is at such an age now that he wouldn't be able to play. Like, it would be a stupid joke if he tried to go back to college or school, and so he'd have to have his son going through. But time has changed. Social aspects have changed. So what we might consider funny might not translate to the screen as a joke. Much like this film didn't translate on its first time round. I mean, it hit some real big highs, but after that, it was forgotten, and which really surprised me. I say surprised. It's what happens. These new things come along. Everyone goes, it's the greatest thing ever, and then they drop it because something new has come along. You're trying to make a Napoleon Dynamite 2 to recapture the flame that you caught with Napoleon Dynamite. It's not going to ever fucking happen. It never does. It never will. You'll get Napoleon Dynamite 2 come out. People will go, I liked it, I didn't like it, and we'll just move on.
Yeah, part of me only kind of wants a number 2 so that some of the actors can get paid. Because a lot of them didn't get paid very much for this first film. Like, John Heder only got paid $1,000 to play Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
And it's just like, considering how much money the film made, and you're like...
But they didn't know that. If the film
did.
had flopped,
exactly.
$1,000 would be the best thing.
Exactly, yeah. So it is perspective, isn't it? But
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he worked out a deal and got paid some more after the film's release. But you would think it would be good for some of those actors.
Like, if John Heder and Jared Hess and the sister could get together to make a new script nowadays, I think it would be great. But if the studio studio are saying they want to make it,
don't do it. Well, what were your favourite scenes from Napoleon
Oh
Dynamite?
man, I had a few. I mean, I kind of really love all of this movie, but I specifically picked out a couple just to have. I mean, like the bit at the beginning between Kip and Napoleon having their little fight. Well, when you come down here and fight me, okay, I will. And then they start just slapping each other before you guys to go answer the door. It's your typical brother fighting. Kip driving over the plastic bowl. Dang it! When he realizes that it broke and he just drives off. I mean, before that, you'd had Uncle Rico trying to sail his 24-piece set. And he pulls out that little shitty sailboat. And the wife's like, I want that. You just know there's people out there who
he's like, here,
that.
see if you can break this. And he's like, and the wife's looking at him like, you're pathetic.
I can't. And the way he kind of holds his head down as he hands it back. The fucking time machine.
Yeah.
You know, never buy a time machine off the internet or anywhere. It's the way he's just like, don't turn on yet. I haven't put in the crystals.
Yeah.
Then he puts the thing and he's rubbing it. Oh, God, it's so awkward. Pedro's flashback, you know, about how he's got to go cut all of his hair. You know, he's been at home and he's not feeling too well. And so he's just gotten too hot and he's just shaved off his head. And then he's got to go to Deb and he's got to go get his wig sorted. Just like kind of everything with Pedro as well. You know, with the going for class president, you know, the dancing with Deb. I love the dance situation because you gotta love 80s music. 80s music is fucking class. I do love a bit of Cyndi Lauper time after time. And so it twinges on my heartstrings when I'm seeing Pedro and Deb having their dance because I kind of want them to be together, but I want Deb to be with Napoleon, you know, and then the three of them kind of just standing next to the dance floor, watching everybody dance and just being the awkward outsiders. But actually, they're the cool ones because they're the ones we come to watch.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I suppose one last favourite scene would have to just be Napoleon coming over the hillside on that horse. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a few memorable moments in the film. I think the first one for me is watching that farmer blast that cow as the kids drive by. I'm just like, that's great. Wow, I can't believe that's in a movie. I can't believe that actually happened. Yeah. You already mentioned it, the mail order time machine. That's just great. The whole sequence. You're watching it play out like secretly I kind of want it to work.
Yeah, secretly you do.
And I mean, again, this is apparently a true story. The director actually knew someone that ordered a time machine off the internet.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, yeah, people will scam anybody for a few pennies online. It hasn't changed. I also quite like the scene where we got the bully. He's harassing this other kid, like, "Oh, let me ride your bike." No, and he starts wrestling the bike off the kid, and then all of a sudden you see that car, that lowrider pull up, the suspension going. It was the same when they go to pick up Pedro's date for the dance, and the car's out there, fucking suspension going on it.
It's the way they don't say anything; they just kind of shake their heads.
Yeah,
those two guys remind me of the hitmen from fucking Breaking Bad.
Yes, totally. Yeah. So, yeah, great moment. Because like anytime you've been bullied at school, you just wish to turn, and just have two heroes there, and they're just fucking ready to scare the bully off. It's great scene. And I mean, it has to be said, like it might not necessarily be a favorite scene, but it is the most memorable scene in the whole film.
Yeah,
and that is Napoleon's dance.
The dance,
it's absolutely iconic. His moveset, he retains that kind of gormless look, you know, and he pulls it off. So yeah, bravo. Even though I don't like it, I appreciate it. And if there's one last, not favourite scene in the film I want to talk about, is the music.
Oh, yes.
Now, of course, all the music, all the songs in the film are all from the early 80s, just to keep within that 82 kind of time frame. But the actual music score for the film, I was listening to it and I was like, my God, like, it is that piece of music that is so... It's quirky music. It's weird. It's strange. It's odd notes.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, it's kind of alienating almost, but it's the sort of music that... It's not like circus music, but it's music that goes, it's comedy, or it's music that goes, it's strange.
Yes.
And I couldn't help but think of the Greasy Strangler.
Yeah.
That had its music that was just so sort of twisted and weird and surreal and strange, but it worked in context with the film.
It's like the movie. It's like the music of the movie's trying to say, look, it's weird, but you can smile and it's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like the songs choices and the music as well. Iain, do you recommend Napoleon Dynamite?
I do recommend Napoleon Dynamite. Like I kind of recommend all of the movies this guy has made, from Nacho Libre, which is a bit fucking awkward and weird, to Gentleman Broncos, which is even more awkward and fucking weird. This is just kind of less awkward and weird because it's more real, I suppose. I love just John Heder's performance as Napoleon. He's made this character just iconic for cinema. You know, like Gary said, the dance will just, you know, whenever you think of 100 films that you should watch before you die, I will not be surprised if Napoleon Dynamite isn't somewhere on that list, just to say, like, look, it's weird, but it's funny. All of the actors do their roles really well. The music, like I said, is really good. It makes me feel young again. It makes me feel fun. It makes me look back on things in my life and go, oh, that was bad, but I've gotten over it, and it was awkward then, but it's kind of fun, and I can look back and smile now. That's how this movie makes me feel.
Yeah, I also have to recommend Napoleon Dynamite. It's hard not to, as this is a cult favourite for so many, and it is one of the most successful independent comedy films of all time. It's absolutely iconic. Jared Hess infused the script with his own experiences. He used local extras to capture that authenticity and created a slice of life with deadpan, offbeat and quirky comedy with memorable characters. John Heder was pitch perfect, from his dress sense to his social awkwardness and all of his strange mannerisms. It's easy to see why Napoleon Dynamite was such an icon. Even the supporting cast was equally fantastic, although I felt the stereotypical bullies and popular kids was a little too much, or rather too animated when compared to the other characters. I loved the 80s vibe this film has. It feels very retro in a slightly modern way, but it matches the tone and it reflects this small town that time seems to have forgotten. It's a comedy film, and that comes down to timing for the actors and the editor. And I feel this was done perfectly here, giving the jokes room, creating that quirky strangeness, that gap, you know, that in the timings. Really well done. And I'll be honest and say that 20 years ago, I wasn't a big fan of Napoleon Dynamite. I couldn't see why so many people found this so funny, so connected with it. And comedy works different for us all. So if you were like me, maybe give this one another look. It might not be a must-watch for me, but still really easy to enjoy with so many memorable scenes. He's out to prove he's got nothing to prove. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.